figure out where you fit, what you're doing. You might be offering a product that's brand new, and maybe it's brand new because no one really needs it. Like maybe it's been tried before and there isn't really that product market fit. Maybe you're offering a product that is exactly what other people are doing, but you need to have some sort of differentiator, some way to improve. There's going to be some value that you can deliver. Figure out what that is and focus on that. Don't just create that copycat. Don't just create that clone and be content. Like, yeah, you could go sell the same widget the next guy's selling. And if your sales and marketing team's better, then you'll be successful. But that's not going to be sustainable. You're not going to grow quickly. And it's certainly not going to be exciting. If you're in a startup environment, you're doing that probably because you want that excitement. You want that growth. You're not doing that to be an also ran. So if you really want to set yourself apart, it's by finding out what your value is and working tirelessly every day to maximize that value to your customers.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Matthew Pincus, and hopefully I pronounced the last name close to being right. But Matthew is in high school, in his own words, wasn't the greatest students, but did graduate nonetheless. Went on to college at Ohio State and wanted to get through college, graduate, and get into the real world. So after college, packed up, drove across country, went to do bartending for a period of time, and then wanted a different future. Had a friend that was in Venice Beach, California, and stayed on the couch for a period of time. I did odd jobs for about a period of about 5 or 6 years. Then went to work for corporate America for a period of time, and stayed at that for about 5 years or so, and then moved on to another job. The business got acquired. He had a chance to go to England, did that for a period to help grow the business, and was deciding to do that, and then did that for a while, moved back to the US, left the business, had a friend doing his own business, and co-founded the business that they're doing now. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Matthew.
Thanks for having me, Devin. It's great to talk to you. Yeah, my life and work history there. I feel like it was a lot more exciting before I joined corporate America. But yeah, I got started a little bit late. I wasn't a great student, and then finally, once I guess I got my head on straight, I feel like life's been good. My career's been pretty good.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into that a bit. So you started to talk a little bit through, but tell us a little bit more about how your journey got started, coming out of high school, going into college, and before getting into the working world.
Yeah, I in high school, I showed up for most of my classes, took the tests, kind of made my way through it. I think fully a third of my graduating class in high school went to Ohio State, so I was part of the crowd. Went to Ohio State. Great school, love it. Sorry, the Ohio State University. I'll have my my degree rescinded if I don't say that. But again, it was kind of the same. Went to classes, got my degree, didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I was kind of aimless graduating. Ended up bartending right after college, and one day I woke up and I was content, and that kind of panicked me. I didn't want to be a 40-year-old bartender. I was 23 at the time. I'd been making good money, good cash, especially when you're 23 is phenomenal. I didn't want to keep doing that forever, so I decided I needed to just find somewhere, someplace, some way to motivate myself a little bit better to start a career. So I packed up my little Hyundai Elantra and drove cross country from Ohio to California. I had a buddy, as you mentioned, was living in Venice Beach, said he had a very comfortable salmon colored couch that I could borrow for as long as I needed. And I took advantage of that. His roommate ended up moving to go teach English in Korea a couple months later. So I took over the bedroom at that point and stayed in California and slept fortunately on a bed ever since then.
So now you packed up, got all my belongings, put them in the car, drove across country. Now at that point, other than having a couch that you could put your head down on, did you have any job prospects or knew what you were going to do, or how did you figure out once you got to Venice Beach what you were going to do from there?
Yeah, not a clue. I think I did most of my job prospecting at the time on Craigslist, and I actually took some really odd jobs. For a little while, I did the movie test screenings. You know how they'll show the same movie with three different endings, see which one the audience likes most. Pick that one to be the full release. I think I saw the movie Spanglish 15 or 20 times, all different versions, and it was a surprisingly good movie. Adam Sandler movie. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty entertaining. One of the showings I got to watch with Jack Nicholson, so that was really cool. That wasn't going to be a career path. I ended up getting a job in a casino, actually, and I won't get into all the detail about the California casinos, but they're not traditional casinos. They're really just card rooms where you're playing against the other players instead of the house. And I was actually licensed as a player, certified by the state of California as a player. And I had a little badge, Matthew Pincus, player. I was a professional gambler in a sense. Did that for a little while. I was working a graveyard shift doing that, and then had a friend of mine who said, "Hey, I used to work at this huge corporation called Ingram Micro. You've probably never heard of it. They're an IT distributor. One of my colleagues there is actually looking to make a hire if you're looking to move into the more corporate world, more 9 to 5 type world." So I jumped at the opportunity, and since then I think I've been on a pretty steady trajectory, I guess, one way or another. Worked for a number of years at Ingram Micro, primarily on the vendor side. Ended up getting poached by one of those vendors, Add-On Networks. That Add-On, after they brought me on board, our plan was to grow. It had been around for around a decade, but I was still employee number 15. And they'd made the decision that it was time to stop being such a lifestyle company and be a high growth organization. That was part of why they brought me in. So I went from being employee 15 when I started there to being one of 300 or 400 employees by the time I left, about a decade later. In my time there, I took on a variety of roles. The most recent of which, generally, was what you mentioned, my opportunity to go to England. Back in 2017, we were acquired by a PE firm. That PE firm acquired a company that was in a similar space, that was headquartered in Cirencester, England. It's about an hour west of London, halfway between London and Bristol, if anyone knows the geography. And so when they completed those two acquisitions, they decided to keep our leadership team in place and remove the leadership team from that other company, which created a bit of a void for the company over in the UK. So I was tapped to go over to the UK and run our European business. The idea was that we had high costs. The company was headquartered out of there, so there was a lot of overhead, a lot of fixed costs, but not much revenue, because despite being headquartered there, the bulk of that company's business was actually in the US. So my job was to grow our European business, and I spent 4 or 5 years doing that. I opened up India, and that became a tremendous success for us. We grew a lot of our business throughout Africa, especially South Africa, and really we tapped into some of the major markets in Europe that we had left previously untapped. Spent a couple of years doing that. It was a great time. It wasn't the dream experience that my wife and I really hoped for. Our plans were to, take a long weekend every other month and go see France, go see Sweden, go see Spain, go see whatever. But then COVID hit. So got to spend a lot of extra time in the office. I was very proud that through COVID, through the epidemic, we grew. We never had any furloughs. We never had any layoffs. We were adding people. We were a net positive employer through that whole process. So I was glad, for how I managed to do that during such a trying and frightening time for everybody. We kept our office open. A lot of the work that we needed to do was sort of production-based. People needed to be in the office. But we came up with some innovative ways for people who were unable to come into the office to still do their work. For instance, a lot of what we did was testing. We primarily worked with fiber optic hardware equipment, and some of that needed to be plugged in our lab, had some scripts run, and then the logs of those scripts kind of reviewed to see if there's any errors being spit out by the equipment. And we kind of just reconfigured our lab staff so that we could have certain employees that were, unwilling, unable to come into the office. They had family members that were high risk, they wanted to protect, things like that, where they could work remotely. And we had, initially someone's idea was, hey, let's take some of this expensive lab equipment home and we could just do all the work from home. That didn't really fly. I wasn't going to let an employee walk out with a $500,000 switch. But
I think I'd probably be the same. I'd be a little nervous if I was the owner of the equipment to say, well, there goes $500,000. Hopefully it comes back.
And, I trusted them, but mistakes happen. Somebody accidentally knocks over a glass of water while they have this switch sitting on their desk. And all of a sudden we fry $500,000 worth of equipment that we probably couldn't have insured if it's just at somebody's home office. wasn't going to do that. So, we got really creative, we got innovative, figuring out how to set up, we changed I guess our personnel and our processes in a way to make sure that we had somebody whose job was to be a runner. Their job was to be in the lab, plugging stuff into the various switches, and then giving the heads up to our remote staff who could then run the scripts, review all the logs, and feed back to the runner, what changes, what had to happen with those products. So I was very proud of how we approach things. Because we were in the fiber optic industry and there was such a demand for bandwidth during COVID with everybody suddenly working from home, it was a boon for us. It meant that, business growth was kind of easy. We just needed to put ourselves in the right place at the right time. Supply chain was the biggest challenge, but part of my background prior to moving to England was in managing our supply chain. So I had a lot of strong connections and relationships there. And so it really was a great chance for us to excel.
No, that's awesome. Now, one question I'd had kind of come up as a journey is it kind of felt like, and putting words in your mouth that you can certainly correct, was that, the start of your journey, you almost had the anti-working for corporation kind of feel to it where, hey, I was a bartender, that I couch surfed on, my friend's couch, I did odd jobs. And then you went from there to working more, quote unquote, a traditional job, or working more for a corporate America, getting to go to Europe and doing that. Now, how did you balance that? Or was that intentional? Or did you just, hey, I need to pay the bills and this will allow me to do so? Or kind of how did you make that shift?
It's probably more the latter. I mentioned we were in England, we really wanted to do a lot of traveling. That's something I've always loved to do. And when you're a bartender, when you're working in a casino, it's easy to do that. It's shift work, it's cash work. You can get that money and you can, take whatever time off you need. At the casino, we were able to do basically 8 consecutive 10-hour shifts and then basically have 2 weeks off without using any PTO. So it was great to be able to travel, but I didn't necessarily have the money to go all the places, do all the things that I wanted. So on the other hand, I could do, the corporate gig where I'm maybe getting paid a little bit better, or maybe I'm getting paid for when I take my time off, when it's not so cash oriented, so that I have a little bit more money to actually fund some of the travel that I want. So it wasn't necessarily a conscious decision. Oh, hey, I'm this, counterculture, anti-corporate dude. And all of a sudden, one day I woke up and put on the suit and tie and said, no, I'm a changed man. It was more just, as I grew, as I got to do some of the things that I wanted to do in life, and then found more things that I wanted to do, I needed to find the means to do that. And, I don't want to say that I was kind of just, a background character in my own life, but in a way it was just things kind of happened. I mentioned to somebody that I was frustrated with the graveyard shift. That led to them saying, hey, I have an old friend who's hiring the corporate gig. Do you want to take that? I hadn't really pushed much to try to get into corporate work before then, but I wasn't against it. Then I happened to work with a vendor that happened at the time to decide they wanted to focus more on growth, and they liked me. So it was kind of coincidental that we were working together and I was in the right place at the right time. And, I busted my butt doing my best work for them. It gave me all the opportunities, but it was something where I didn't have some Machiavellian long-term plan. It was more just, I wanted to be able to do what I wanted to do with my personal life. And I'm happy to kind of do whatever I need to do in my work life. If you ask me what my passion is, what I wanted to be as a kid, did I get to do that? I wanted to be the center fielder for a baseball team. I wanted to be the star pitcher. I want to be a basketball player. That wasn't going to happen. I'm not that athletic. So, work is work. I enjoy what I do. I've always kind of tried to find the joy in what I do. I'm the sort to get bored a little bit. So I like the variety. I like being able to change the things that I'm doing, which is kind of what's led me to where I am now, running my own business. But at the end of the day, I kind of think work's just a means to an end.
No, I tend to understand that and agree to it. Now, you can find jobs that you tend to like better or some than others, but I think that to a large degree, I think everybody would retire if they could. And a job is usually a way that facilitates, at least or filling in the gap in the meantime until you're in position to do so. So now you did that. You went to work for corporate America for a period of time, had a chance to go see Europe, and then finally came back to the U.S. Now, how did you decide, or what prompted the switch to go from working with a big company, Europe, traveling around, to starting your business with your co-founder?
So coming back to the US was kind of a confluence of events. When we moved to England in the first place, my wife was actually pregnant. So we moved over there and didn't have much of a support network, exacerbated by COVID. before COVID, we came back a handful of times in the 2 years we were there, basically twice a year. And it was easy to, see the grandparents and see the friends and family. And then COVID hit, we were just kind of isolated. And for my wife, staying at home, she'd worked before we left, but once we moved to England, didn't make as much sense for her to be working. She was really isolated. Her only outlet was a newborn, a baby, until I got home at the end of the day. If she wanted to talk to her friends or family back in California, 8 time zones away, she had to wait until 3, 4 p.m. before anyone would come online. So, there was a degree of isolation for us. I was on a 5-year visa. It was coming up towards the end of that. We'd made a couple acquisitions while we were over there. I could have had the opportunity if we chose to move somewhere like Amsterdam or Belgium, where we had a couple other offices. But just given the circumstances, we were considering just moving back to California and figuring out what we would do. I feel like I had done my job in kind of building that engine. There wasn't really infrastructure for growth in Europe when I got there. I built that. I could have continued to grow it. There was still more work to be done, but I felt like I could also kind of turn it over to, the next in line, and it would continue to grow and be successful. And I wouldn't feel as though I left things incomplete. So I had that sort of degree of satisfaction where I could walk away without feeling like there was unfinished business. Simultaneously, we were PE backed, coming up on 5 years. There's obviously going to be an exit time frame for our backers. We ended up getting acquired by a Fortune 500 company, which gave me a little bit of a payday, and it kind of made everything a little bit easier. So knowing that was in the works, we made the decision to move back to the US. I did put in another 6 months at the company, technically still leading Europe from California, knowing that was a short-term kind of working out a transition all through the process. But ultimately, it was something where I was just winding down throughout my time back in California. My co-founder was somebody who was a friend of mine prior to that previous company. And I actually hired him into that company. I mentioned I had a variety of roles while I was there. One of them was essentially creating our tech support desk. And, I don't really deserve a ton of credit for that one. It was people who could answer questions when calls came in. I wasn't all that technical. The team we had wasn't really all that technical, but we needed people who could learn the products and be a little bit more technical so that we wouldn't need to escalate to our engineers and bog down them. And my friend had actually been a technical recruiter, didn't really have technical knowledge per se, but was interested in learning. So I brought him on board, and then he was really the one who turned the fledgling tech support desk that I created into a tech support organization. He spent, the better part of those next couple of years building us out from the 4-person team that I launched to a global organization. As part of that global organization, we were providing our customers 24/7 support, or trying to, at least. We had an RFP with a major service provider, somebody that you might have your phone or your internet or your TV from, who on that RFP said, hey, do you provide 24/7 support? By the way, we will audit you, and there is a huge penalty if we ever call and no one picks up the phone. So when we're completing this RFP, all eyes in the conference room turned to my co-founder, David, who, at the time was our VP of technical services. I forget what his title was. And everyone says, David, can we do this? And he says, well, yes, we're going to figure it out, because, this is a major opportunity for us. This is an account that I think now is probably doing $10 million a month for that old company. So, it was well worthwhile. We had our team in California. We had some other agents in the US. We also had our tech support team in England, and we had one tech support person in India. I mentioned we'd open that market up, but we didn't quite have 24/7 coverage. So we had to outsource that. And David tried to find somebody that could be just slightly technical. We sort of had a niche product. We didn't expect people to just find a call center that were experts in our stuff, but somebody that could be passingly technical, where it wouldn't sound like they were just reading script. And beyond that, we actually had a variety of brands, not just because of acquisitions, but we'd even had a white label strategy previous. So we needed somebody who could sort of handle a complex workflow where they need to know which phone number is being called on our behalf so they could answer us the correct brand. And then escalations. We knew they wouldn't be able to actually solve the problem, so they need to be able to kick the calls upstairs to the right place. And David searched and searched, ended up settling on the best option, and they could achieve none of those things reliably. He always tells a story about how he was literally bottom of the list, 10th on the list of escalations, and somebody from another service provider I don't even know how the guy got the phone number. So the products that we sold were transceivers, which, you might be familiar with what a networking switch is. It's your router, same idea. The idea is that you have a switch, at the headquarters for Cox Chart or whatever it is. Then you have another switch that's sitting in the cabinet that you drive past on the street corner. And to connect those, you have a long fiber optic cable. But the fiber optic cable doesn't plug directly into the switch. The fiber optic cable plugs into the transceiver, which plugs into the switch. The transceiver basically tells the switch how far it's going to be shooting across that fiber optic cable. So it was a necessary device. And in some cases, if somebody gets fiber to the home, they might have a transceiver plugged into the little box on the outside of their house. So somebody's cable was out, and he went exploring to try to figure out what the problem was, somehow found our transceiver, gave us a call just to say, hey, my cable's out. Can you come fix it? Didn't say, hey, this is Time Warner, whatever it was, Charter, I don't know. But had our company name, had our phone number, he gave it a call. This was 2 a.m. Maybe it was East Coast and it was 5 a.m, but the call center people answered the call and somehow went straight from number 1 on the list all the way down to number 10 on the list, called David, who happened to be in Vegas when the call came through. He is only supposed to get the most urgent of urgent calls. So when he sees this number coming through, he knows it's a call he has to take. So he's in the slot machine area. You hear the ding, ding, ding in the background. He's picking up the phone, trying to cover the phone a little bit so there's not too much background noise, and talks to the guy for 5 minutes and says, yeah, this is not something that we do. You need to actually call the Time Warner support number if you actually want to help them, get help getting your cable TV, your internet fixed. I'm sorry. So the fact that, they were just a complete mess in delivering the service that was what they were geared to do made him recognize that there was this immense demand for a good sort of call center, technical call center service. And so he, had spent a good number of years at the company as well, but also was looking for a reason to leave. He feel like he'd run its course for him. And so then knowing that I left, we had been talking about that exact idea, how we saw there was that need in the market, and how, between our two skill sets, him actually running the desk, me building organizations, we should have the skill set that we need to do this for ourselves. And so last summer, that's exactly what we did. We ended up leaving that company and then launching this one. So this company now is called Helped. And what we do is outsource technical support, outsourced help desk.
No, it sounds like it was definitely a great journey and a fun evolution as to how you arrived with your partner and your co-founder today. Now, give us an idea. Where's the company at today? How are things going, and where are things headed?
Well, we're a little bit less than a year in. We're largely bootstrapped. We took a little bit of friends and family money, but that was really just so we could make sure that the first time when we made a hire, we'd have money in the bank to pay them. We are borderline profitable. We're kind of at that point where if we wanted to not make any more hires, we could be profitable. But we want to continue growing, which means making the investments in people and infrastructure. And so we're kind of towing that line where, we're growing, we're doing well, we're adding clients, we're adding agents, that foundation is in place. And I feel like we're about to turn that corner to where it's really the profit that grows. And, being the head of the business, that's kind of key to me. I want to make sure that the business itself grows. Our customer count is probably the key metric, and beyond that, just the minutes that we are supporting those customers. But at the end of the day, we want to get to the point where it's sustainable growth, where we're not making the decision, gosh, do we have the money in the bank to actually make this hire if we don't add another client for, the next month or two? Fortunately, there haven't really been dry spells like that. And so the growth has been sustained. But that's where we are right now, right on that border of turning the corner. We really have some ambitious and creative plans for how we're going to evolve the company. Right now, all of the agents that we have are full-time W-2 agents, people that are working for us. We've had some ideas about how to expand from there. We, have talked about doing something like an Uber for tech support, where you see all these layoffs at the Metas, the Microsofts, the Salesforce, all these tech companies, all these developers, all these very knowledgeable people who maybe have a decent nest egg because they were probably paid pretty well at these previous jobs, and now they're free, not sure what they want to do. I was actually in an Uber driving from an airport sometime, and the guy said, yeah, I'm a Cisco network engineer. I just don't like the 9 to 5. So I made a little bit of money driving Uber is enough to make ends meet for me. So I'm doing this just to pass the time. And I thought, this guy has all this knowledge. He doesn't want to be sitting at a desk all day. Maybe we can give him that flexibility. Maybe we can have a guy like that be, the Uber driver, but a tech support agent. So we're still figuring out exactly how that will work. For some of the verticals that we focus on, it will work. For some, it won't. And so, there's some plans for how exactly we can execute that. They're going to be coming down the line. But once we turn that corner to a profitability, we're gonna be able to make the investments to make that happen.
Awesome. Well, sounds like definitely a fun business, great trajectory, and a lot of opportunity ahead. So definitely is an exciting time. So awesome. Well, now as we've reached the present day of the journey and even looking a bit into the future, great time to jump to the two questions I always like to ask at the end of each interview. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? And what'd you learn from it?
So when I was over in England, we did make a couple of the acquisitions that I mentioned, company in Belgium, company in the Netherlands. They were companies just like ours, different production processes, different customer bases, but by and large, they were mirrors of us, just slightly different inner workings. And because I was, the head of Europe, I was responsible for integration. We were PE backed at the time, and obviously PE firm wants to see some value in that investment. They want to see those synergies. As I went to visit these companies, I looked at their production, I looked at their processes and said, they have some great ideas. They're doing some things that we're not doing that I think would be valuable. They'll be valuable to improve our production efficiencies. They'll be, valuable for what we can position to our customers as the value we're adding. And our CEO, our CFO at the time told me that I'd gone native and that, our processes were the good processes, that we bought these companies so that we could integrate them into our processes, and that my job was to get that done. And ultimately, that's what I focused on doing. And I, that got me in some trouble. It was difficult to go into these companies that we acquired and do my best to kind of build morale, tell everyone, jobs are safe. We're here to grow. We're not here to cut. But hey, by the way you've done things for the last 15 years, we're not doing that anymore. And I feel like I should have stuck to my guns. I should have said, hey, these are profitable, successful businesses. We bought these because they know what they're doing. They're doing things well. Let's not rush. There are definitely learnings we can share, there are improvements we can make, but let's not, we're here, they're here. Let's not just have them move laterally. Let's figure out what we're going to look like in a year or two and make sure that we're mutually moving in that direction. And I think my biggest mistake was just in not fighting that. It was one of those tense conversations, with my higher ups, where I said, this is what we need to do. We're doing this the wrong way. And they said, we don't care. This is what you have to do. And, I didn't just give in at the drop of a hat, but ultimately I relented and did that. And I feel like I should have fought the good fight more. It's funny because ultimately then when we got acquired, it was by a company that is a manufacturing conglomerate that has the approach to acquire profitable businesses and just let them do their thing. So I ended up leaving, but around that time, the decision was made, let's cease our integrations. Let's not change any more processes. Let's let these guys continue doing their thing. So I got my way on my way out the door, basically.
You were vindicated as you were walking out the door. So at least you got a bit of that vindication, and that sounds like it was a good, it's hard when you're working for someone else. Where do you pick and choose the battles? Does it make sense to stick to your guns, or, do you put your job on the line, and, how hard do you push? And yet, sometimes you have to make that balance, and you make the right decision sometimes, and sometimes you look back and wish you'd done it differently. But sounds like, an easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from.
Exactly. That was the learning. I wish I'd done it. I wish I had stuck my guns. That wasn't a hill to die on. I should have insisted, because I feel like I really knew the best. And these guys were also knowledgeable, experienced. And at the end of the day, I need to defer to people who are also smart and capable and say, oh, maybe you know best. I'll go and do it. But yeah, no, I think I just need to fight the fight more sometimes.
Makes sense. So awesome. Well, now is the second question I'd like to ask is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Figure out where you fit, what you're doing. You might be offering a product that's brand new, and maybe it's brand new because no one really needs it. Like maybe it's been tried before and there isn't really that product market fit. Maybe you're offering a product that is exactly what other people are doing, but you need to have some sort of differentiator, some way to improve. There's going to be some value that you can deliver. Figure out what that is and focus on that. Don't just create that copycat. Don't just create that clone and be content. Like, yeah, you could go sell the same widget the next guy's selling. And if your sales and marketing team's better, then you'll be successful. But that's not going to be sustainable. You're not going to grow quickly. And it's certainly not going to be exciting. If you're in a startup environment, you're doing that probably because you want that excitement. You want that growth. You're not doing that to be an also ran. So if you really want to set yourself apart, it's by finding out what your value is and working tirelessly every day to maximize that value to your customers.
No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So awesome. Well, now as we are wrapping up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out, contact you, find out more?
So our website is gethelped.com, gethelpt.com. And my website is matthew.pincus at gethelped.com, and open to any and all inquiries. We are obviously always looking for new customers. We're perpetually adding people to our team, and investors are always welcome as well.
Awesome. Well, definitely great company support that, or encourage people to reach out and make a great connection. If nothing else, a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, Matthew, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you listeners that are out there, you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if along your journey you need help with any patents, trademarks, or anything else, grab some time with us to chat. Just go to strategymeeting.com. So thank you again, Matthew, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks for having me, Devin.